Welcome to Easy to Love Yoga with Shanna. On today's edition of Strike a Pose, we're going to bring a spotlight on Dragonfly, also known as straddle pose in Yin Yoga. So a Dragonfly allows you to have your legs nice and wide, nice straight legs on the mat, in a nice V position. We're going to think about lowering our body forward, bringing your hands to the mat. And if it's available, you can also bring your full body down to the mat. So if you think about leaning forward, so you're sitting on a blanket, so your hips are slightly elevated above your knees. And as you lean forward and bring your hands forward on the mat, finding that spot that works for you, your current level of flexibility in this pose. Holding here for a moment. Now, if you're very flexible, you may be able to bring your body fully down to the ground. We have lots of props that we can use to make this pose more accessible if you're not one of those really flexible, bendy people in Dragonfly pose. So let's begin. So we're going to take a couple of yoga blocks. We're going to take those blocks on the high end. We're going to walk them forward. We're going to think about having our seat forward on our blanket, hips elevated slightly above the knees, and we're going to come forward, reaching for those blocks, reaching those blocks as far forward as you can, keeping the back nice and straight here, giving the focus fully into the lower part of the body. So we're focusing on our hips, our groin, our inner thigh, and our spine here. Feeling that nice sensation of the stretch as you move into this version of Dragonfly, holding on to blocks in a high position. Another alternative is to have the blocks closer to the body and resting the elbows on those blocks, just bringing the hands together. You can even just rest your chin on the hands, one over the other, whatever you find most comfortable. I like to just allow my forearms to be on the blocks and just have my hands hanging loose on the blocks. Feeling that nice stretch throughout the body in this Dragonfly pose. Another way you can make Dragonfly more accessible is by using a cushion or a yoga bolster. So I'm going to place this bolster on the mat. I'm going to bring blocks on either side of my inner knee just so I can use that block to balance my forearm, bringing my forearm to the blocks, holding on to that bolster. I'm going to allow my forehead to come down to the bolster, resting against the bolster as I rest in this nice Dragonfly pose. Taking a few moments here, noticing the sensations. Another option, if you have a set of blocks and you have a yoga bolster, is you can bring the yoga bolster across the blocks. So you can fold one arm on top of the other, and you can allow yourself to come down to your bolster slowly as you settle into a more restorative version of Dragonfly. Rounding the back and shoulders gently in this pose. Noticing the sensations that you feel as you relax into this pose. Alternatively, you could bring your elbows down and just support on either side of your head and just hold your head gently between your hands. This feels more comfortable on your neck. You can bring your elbows wider apart on that bolster, have one hand lying on top of the other, and just resting your chin on your hands. Lots of different ways to modify if you have a bolster or a firm cushion and a set of yoga blocks. Beautiful. Now we're going to take this block away, this bolster away, and the blocks away. We're going to use a yoga strap. So I'm going to come off of my blanket, setting my blanket aside for a moment. I'm going to roll back onto my back, putting the strap around the sole of my right foot, rolling back here, Holding the strap with both hands, I'm going to bring both feet into the strap. And I'm going to take my feet nice and wide on that strap and just holding on to that strap here, allowing my back to be nice and flat against the mat. Legs up in the strap, feet are flexed in the strap, and just holding here. Another modified version of dragonfly using a yoga strap. Feeling the support of the earth under the back and the torso. To come out of this pose, just bring your feet closer together, lower your right foot to the floor, take the strap away with your left hand and allow your left foot to come up to the floor. I'm just going to roll up here for a moment. I'm going to show you another way to do dragonfly, this time using the wall. So I'm just going to take my props, make sure they're not in my way. I'm going to bring my hip right up against the wall. I'm going to slowly roll back, bringing my legs fully up the wall. Heels pressing against the wall, all the back of my leg is pressing against the wall, and my glutes are against the wall. And this is where you may want to use a set of yoga blocks, or you could just use your hands for support. So we're going to slowly allow our feet to come apart on the wall until you find that spot that's most comfortable for you. You can bring your elbows to the ground and just support your legs. On the outside of your legs, just adding that gentle support here as you do dragonfly against the wall. Now you're going to notice this feels a little bit more intense in the inner thigh and groin because of the way gravity is working on our body here. You can also use these blocks to give you some support, holding on to the blocks, pressing up against the knees, just supporting the legs in that fashion. Whatever works best for you, whether you're using the blocks or if you're simply just using your hands here for support. You can stay in this pose from anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes or whatever feels most comfortable to you. And slowly coming out of this dragonfly pose at the wall by bringing your legs together, slowly bringing your feet flat, making sure you have no props on one side of you, so you can gently allow your feet to drift down the wall, roll onto your knees, and come up back into a nice seated position. Now I'm going to use my blanket once again and demonstrate another way that you can do dragonfly using a blanket and a set of blocks. So we're going to sit on the blanket. We're seated forward on that blanket. So our hips are elevated above our knees. We have a set of blocks and we are in a dragonfly straddle pose. Now this may bother your knees. You can bring your feet flat to the ground and you can bring a set of yoga blocks just under the legs for that added little bit of support as you lean forward. So you can just reach down and find that comfortable spot on your legs that you can hold on to as you rest in this position. The bolster, so the blocks supporting under your legs. Now we can use a bolster as well. So I'm just going to reach for my bolster here. So if I had a bolster, I could have the blocks supporting my bent legs. I could have that bolster in front of the body, having the hands on either side of that bolster. And I can just gently lower, allow myself to relax and lower my forehead into the bolster. Slowly rising up. Now you could also just have that bolster lying on the mat and you could just be reaching forward into a comfortable position and just resting your hands and just allowing your neck and shoulders to round here. Lots of different options on how to modify your dragonfly pose. So remember that when you have a rounded back, you're bringing more attention and stress into the torso and the spine. And when you have a straight back in one of these forward fold poses, you're bringing more attention to all the muscles in the legs. So keep that in mind if you find that a traditional dragonfly pose where we're coming straight forward is feeling a little too aggressive in your legs. You can bend your knees slightly. You can add a couple of pool noodles underneath your knees to give that little bit of extra lift to the knees if you're finding that it's a little bit too intense on the knees. So keeping that straight posture, coming forward, a little bit of support under the knees, whether it's pool noodles or a rolled up blanket or towel on either side can be helpful. Having that nice straight back. Now if you find having that straight back, putting the emphasis on your legs is too bothersome, remember that you can always round and come forward into dragonfly. So if you have a cushion in front of you, you could rest your elbows onto your knees, your hands onto that cushion in front of you, and just allow yourself to gently round your back and round your shoulders into this dragonfly. So there really are lots of options and ways to modify this pose, keeping you on your comfort in mind. So remember that a straight back puts more focus on the back of the legs, and a rounded back puts more focus on the torso, so the spine and the low back. So keeping that in mind, knowing that you can use a yoga bolster or a nice firm cushion that you might have around the house. You can use pool noodles to give you extra support underneath the knees if you're finding that it's a little too intense under the knees. If you don't have pool noodle handy, you can use a rolled up towel or a low rolled blanket. You can also bend your knees slightly here, and you can use the supportive blocks underneath your knees, or even just hugging under your knees if you don't have a set of blocks, and just leaning into the pose will also work. So find the combination of props and the position that you take in your pose that works best for you today. And know that anytime that you can change what you're doing, every day is different. Our bodies respond differently to different poses on different days. So try taking different poses of your dragonfly and see what works best for you. And I hope you enjoy doing dragonfly in the future. Thank you so much for joining me, and have a fantastic day.